Hey, how you doing, Colliders? It's Mr. Warren Hayes here once again. We're going to be wrapping up and reviewing another edition of AEW Collision here. It is July 9th. It is the day after the July 8th Collision. That's usually how dates work. Thank you for being here. I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. Hope you had a meaningful weekend. Meaningful? It doesn't necessarily have to be meaningful. Could be just like silly and dopey. Doesn't have to have some deep meaning. Or it could be just meaningful by the fact that it is dopey and full of nonsense. So there you go. Whatever good it's bringing you, I hope you're fully embracing it. And we are going to start embracing the Collision review here on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes. If you're watching this, thank you very much. Leave a like on this video and subscribe if it's the first time you do pop in here. If you're listening to this on your audio feeds, well, that's fantastic too. And be sure to subscribe there as well. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star rating on Spotify. All these little things help out, of course. And, for the subscriptions and the follows and all that good stuff, I think it is a good time of year to do that. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because next Saturday is the beginning of the G1 Climax over in New Japan Pro Wrestling. This is a side note, of course, but it's still starting next weekend. And that means that I will be doing my, fingers crossed, daily, that's right, daily G1 Climax review. I'll be going through every day. At least that's the target, right? Past couple of years, I've been combining 2 days into one review show. Now I'm going to try and do it every day. So we'll see how that turns out. And I'm giving myself the complete leverage to be like, well, I think, we're going to do 2 days in one today and we'll be back to daily. Look, I just want you to know that I've got this beat covered. I'm doing this because you love pro wrestling and I love pro wrestling and the G1 is awesome. So what I'm trying to say is that, on top of that, the AEW Collision reviews, the Dynamite reviews, and the Mr. Warren Hayes show, July, August, like the next month or so, it's going to be chock full of Warren Hayes goodness. So if you can't get enough of it, it's a good time to join in. But yeah, that was a bit of an aside, a little, some housekeeping notes, as they like to say. But in and about itself, today we're focusing on an episode of Collision, which continues to be a different show from Dynamite. And I cannot hammer home enough how important it is and how delightful it has been to be so different in that regard. Because it's not even just a question of of there being an extra 2 hours of wrestling per week, Now it's really an entirely different show than what we get on Wednesday nights. And that was I think it was one of the most important things AEW had to do, was to make it distinctive. And I think it succeeded. And it's keeping on. It's succeeding more and more as we keep pushing on. So, and I think tonight more than ever really showed a massive difference once again. When I say tonight, I mean last night. I'm recording this on a Sunday, of course. So this is let's get right to it, right? This is the Collision that took place at the Brandt Centre in Regina, Saskatchewan. 1,814 tickets distributed as per WrestleTix this morning, as I was checking the latest updates, for a setup of 2,824. That's not spectacular. I mean, the Brandt Centre isn't necessarily the biggest arena in the world. It's like, over 6,000, like 6,800, something to that effect, as far as the capacity goes. So it's not the biggest arena ever, but, still the setup was for, let's say, about a third, maybe a little less than a third of, or a little more than a third, of the full capacity, 2,824. I'll get the words out. But 1,814 distributed. That's not great. It's not. That's not a big. That's not a huge gate. That's not a big venue, and not a huge gate in a small venue. I would say that Regina will not be on any future AEW TV tapings schedule moving forward. The Hamilton show ended up doing better than this. Now, you can absolutely argue that Hamilton had has a bigger population basin than Regina does. So of course you would expect more people to show up there, which is absolutely fine. But no, this wasn't great. There's not many ways you can cut through this. This was not a great gate. It was not a fantastic showing for AEW in old Regina. But let's get to it. Show opens up with pre-tapes of all four guys in the Owen Hart tournament tonight, cutting promos on their opponents, Starks, Hobbs, Joe, and Punk. We get no full Elton John tonight. The coldest of all opens, as CM Punk hits the audience, comes down as the Collision theme is playing, not his. I think that's significant for later. You don't want to waste the pops. So CM Punk comes out as Saturday night is a good night for a fight, and he cuts a promo starts off at ringside. He says he's facing Joe tonight, and that it's the biggest match of his career. It's been 18 years since they shared a ring, but bigger than all of that is Owen Hart, which lights the crowd up, gets them to chant his name. Says if it wasn't for Owen, there would be a lot of guys back there in the locker room who wouldn't be there, probably himself included. He says he's going to do everything he can to win, leave it all in the ring for himself, the fans, and for Owen. So a big babyface promo to kick off Collision. And look, make no mistake here. This was not by accident that he came out to cut a clear-cut babyface promo. Now, if you recall the original Collision promo, return promo, that had nothing of a babyface feel to it. That was absolutely a heel promo. The last couple of weeks, he's been riding that tide, right? That tweener side where he's like he revels in the booze. He's sort of leaning into it a little more. But here tonight, we wanted to make sure that CM Punk was the babyface. They wanted to make sure that he got the good reactions, that Samoa Joe was going to be the heel, and what better way to do it than to start throwing Owen's name around. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying this I'm not putting this forward as some kind of, they just dangled this a bit of artifice. Look, it's pro wrestling. You need to do what you need to do to get things over. But I think it was very smart for them to do it on that regard. But second of all, and this is something that I was talking about recently. It kind of bothers me that the Owen doesn't feel as big as it should. I think it was just this week on the Dynamite review where I was talking about how we need to lean more into this. Tony Khan should be leaning more into it. Look, he's talking about, creating a huge prestigious tournament. He'd love to do a G1 style round robin tournament in North America because the fans have never really experienced one. And I'm cool with that. But he's already got a tournament that has won over the fans instantly by making it in the memory of Owen Hart. So if anything, that should become bigger, more spectacular. There should be more emphasis on that and on remembering the memory of Owen. Yes, it's a little redundant, but Punk did a good job of doing something which I think is kind of left to the wayside and is a crucial factor in the interest that fans have in this tournament. Outside of the fact of, who's in it and the stories that you're telling, fans are into it because it is the first time that we get a chance to remember, since last year anyway. Let's go back to last year. It was the first opportunity that we as wrestling fans had a chance to properly memorialize Owen and remember the man and who he was and what he brought to the business before his untimely death. So by not giving it the significance it should have, and by starting another tournament in the meantime this year, I sort of look at all of this. I'm like, what are we even doing with the Owen? Like, it doesn't feel as special as it should. It doesn't feel like a big deal. Well, CM Punk tonight made it feel like a big deal and brought it back to its essence and the reason why people got into it in the first place and why it still occupies a significant chunk of real estate in the minds of wrestling fans, because it is attached to Owen Hart and it should be significant and it should be important because it's Owen, because it's Martha saying, yes, in this circumstance, we will celebrate the memory of my husband. It's been a contentious subject for years. It's been one where people have been clamoring and hoping for a chance to honor Owen for years. There should be more. This tournament should be bigger, should feel more important. And what CM Punk did last night, is exactly that. He cut a promo that absolutely brought back focus to why we're doing this, even though he used it to get a babyface pop, but that's okay. It's pro wrestling. Because AEW absolutely wanted Punk to be perceived as the good guy here. Didn't want to leave it up to chance. Didn't want to leave it up to, is he going to get booed more than cheered? No. There was a clear path that they were on for the show tonight. Last night. I'll get it right. You slept in the meantime, Warren. What are you doing? So that leads us into the first of the Owen Hart Foundation's semifinal matches tonight. Last night, which was Ricky Starks defeating Powerhouse Hobbs. During entrances, we get a recap of all the history between Starks and Hobbs. We're getting more and more of those on AEW, much to the appreciation of all the fans who watch it. I'm sure all the people who watch AEW and or who watched AEW and were like, well, we need more recaps and video packages. I'm sure this will all drive them back in droves. Those who were pushed away. Anyway, the match itself was fine. It was well worked. QTV comes out with Hobbs. Ricky lights up when he lariats Hobbs to the floor. Then later, Hobbs lariats Ricky Starks down, and QT Marshall, who's there, chokes him out, which leads to a heat segment for Hobbs. Powerbomb off the second turnbuckle by Ricky Starks, which was pretty cool. He goes for the springboard DDT and whiffs it. Wasn't a good week for springboard moves in AEW this week. Spinebuster by Hobbs after some QT interference as well. Hobbs goes for the cover, but QT is arguing with Aubrey, who sort of suspected he tripped up Starks. So she started arguing with him. QT was like, no, go over there, go count the pin. My boy just landed a spinebuster, but Aubrey's arguing with him, and he hops up on the apron. So we get the visual pin. Hobbs goes to jaw jack to QT. And he gets chop blocked by Ricky Starks, followed by a spear. Starks advances with the spear. After the match, though, QT and Hobbs are arguing. Aaron Solo comes in to keep Hobbs from attacking QT. He eats a spine buster. That's finally Harley Cameron who hops in to keep Hobbs off of QT. So Hobbs sulks off. I thought we had done a soft release of Hobbs from QTV. I thought this was get him out of there pronto. Remove him from those bozos as soon as possible. I really thought that this was we had done a soft removal of Will Hobbs from this, but we're not. We get another Miro pre-tape. He says there's a big battle coming, one we've been waiting for. Okay. Is it Miro versus Kenny Omega? What is the big Miro match we've been waiting for? What is the one that we've been salivating at the mouth for? Because I would assume Miro wants titles. What is it, Miro and Luchasaurus? I don't think so. I don't think that's it. Willow Nightingale is backstage with Tony Schiavone. She apparently was injured in her match against Giulia last week in Japan as she lost the Strong Women's Championship. So she's not cleared to compete as scheduled tonight. Last night, this is the theme of the show, right? This is the theme of the review today. Yeah, Warren being completely unable to realize that there has been a full night has passed since he watched the show. So that's the point. So she apparently got injured in her match against Giulia. Athena, who was supposed to be her opponent in the tournament match on Collision, comes in. She's pissed that Willow is fucking up her Collision debut. They're pushing this back to Rampage next Friday. Bit of a bummer, not gonna lie, but still a match I'm looking forward to see. We're going to have a special look at Blood and Guts on Dynamite. See, more of the recaps. I'm sure all of you are very, again, I'm sure all the people who wanted the recaps are now tuning in to AEW programming now. We get Julia Hart defeating Bambi Hall. It's a squash by Julia, which is interesting because Julia is so tiny and Bambi Hall was so much, she's a big lady. Anyway, that's fine. We cut to a pre-tape of Malachi Black talking about masks and how his mask doesn't keep him from being who he is. And then he talks about Andrade's mask and he doesn't need his mask to be great. And that Malachi stole Andrade's mask to help make him better and help him go down the path of being as great as he knows Andrade to be, right? Then we get Andrade who's backstage, and he says he's a businessman, okay? And he does not hide behind his mask. His mask is about his family, his culture, his country, and all Latin people. Yeah, kind of what I was chatting about last week, right? On the last review. It's like, masks in lucha are a little more significant. So I guess he's leaning into this. Anyway, just fight, fellas. Who cares about your gear? And then we had the AEW World Tag Team Title Eliminator match where Bullet Club Gold did not get eliminated. No, in fact, Jay White and Juice Robinson defeated FTR. I loved this match. I thought it was outstanding. I really did. I thought FTR were in top form here. Jay White and Juice, look, man, they just click as a team. It just works. Something that I thought would be a little tedious, maybe not as great, and one that I thought would be, when they first introduced Jay White, I think everyone really expected him to rise as a single star, and Juice would be his second, his jabron, his heater. Well, maybe not necessarily the most impressive heater, but his second in command, his lackey, whatever you want to call it, his stooge. But it ain't turning out like that. In fact, they're turning into a pretty interesting stable. At least the tag team is. I will never tire of seeing Jay White wrestle. Like, despite the fact that I still think that they fumbled a little bit his return and did not immediately skyrocket Jay White and put him over, make him the big deal that he is for AEW fans. I think this is working. I think this is on a different level. But this is indeed working, and I will hardly ever tire of seeing Jay White wrestle. And we had a good substantial amount of time here, and he has been able to flourish in AEW since they started letting him be himself, letting him cut promos, and letting him be himself in the ring too, right down to spitting on Dax. There's what a loogie. You can see that loogie in 4K. I mean, look, they're definitely taking the long road to getting Jay White over, okay? Like I said, they really could have just flicked the switch, blade, on his immediate arrival into AEW, and he would have risen to the top without practically any issues. His mic work, his in-ring work, and his in-ring work has been fantastic. I think it is difficult to be critical of it. I think he's been spot on, wonderful. And he's taken to it. He's taken to the more the more tightly timed North American way of doing things. No surprise, because he is a professional. He's one of the greats. But listen, this crowd was into this match. I was too. I think my only criticism here is that you could have shaved off some time. Maybe a 7 to 8 minute chunk, because this match went, just shy of 30 minutes. 28 minutes, right? Like we're in half-hour territory here. I think, had you shaved 7 to 8 minutes off, and this is a petty criticism, but I think it would have made for, I think people would have, because I've seen some mixed reactions to the match. I think had there been if we had, because I feel there were two finishing sequences in this match, and I think the finishing sequence that they went with ultimately wasn't as exciting as the false one they did previous. And I think if they had just went with that, it would have been a great conclusion. I don't know why they necessarily felt like they had to stretch out an extra 2 to 3 minutes at the end after that first that near sequence where that near fall where Jay White lands a Blade Runner on Cash. But I also get the story that they're trying to tell here, that the match that they're saying here is that FTR are greatest tag team in the world, and that Bullet Club Gold is up there, right? There were no shenanigans, by the way, no shenanigans, no Gun Club, no sneaky offense, no interference. This was as clean a win as you're going to get here. So the story they're telling us here is that Bullet Club Gold can hang with FTR, and that Juice is not just a clown. He can hold up his side of the bargain. He's the guy who got the pin. So they're saying that they're telling this story where these dudes are ready to go the distance with FTR. They're evenly matched, and of course that leads into the 2 out of 3 falls match next week. I think if they had done something different, we might be a little more wary. But this as a setup for another match next week, which has a significant stipulation, one which FTR has been involved in with the Briscoes in their trilogy with the Briscoes, and that Jay White also referenced, when they were talking about it backstage. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it sort of all ties together nonetheless. The fact that we're getting that next week, that we went 30 minutes to get one pinfall, or close to, means next week this match is going to go long. We're going Broadway on this one. And this match ended up making me excited for that return match next week, which I think is going to be great if we base ourselves off of this. Again, I think it could have been shortened a little bit to get a little more, I don't think it needed to go near 30. I really don't. I thought the finish was a little sloppy. I'm nitpicking because overall, I thought this was great. I think these guys have great chemistry. I think these guys have fantastic chemistry with each other. They put together a solid match with a great story. Ultimately, next week, it can go either way. You can't sit here and say, well, this is absolutely what they're going to do. They're probably going to have FTR retain the titles, right? Wouldn't that make sense? But, because Jay pointed out in the promo, we beat you guys twice before. So that's maybe never a good, maybe that's a bit of a tell. But the match next week is going to be great. And I thought FTR were great. They were shining and doing what they do best, while doing their tribute spots. They did a Minnesota Wrecking Crew spot. They did some Bret Hart, of course, as Dax usually does. And I can't say this enough. Bullet Club Gold is something that has really grown on me. Something that I did not expect to get me excited about. And that's thanks to Collision. Because everything that's happened with Bullet Club Gold since Collision has started has been fantastic, has been working in their favor. They're being established as heels, great heels on top of that. Look, Jay White is one of the greatest heels, still is. And this is thanks to Collision. All the time that they spent on Dynamite, they were legitimately lost in the shuffle. Nothing feuds. We had, confusing feuds where Sean Spears was thrown into this at some point. And you're like, what the hell is Jay White doing with all these jabrones? Now we move on to Collision. They're in feuds with CM Punk. They're up there with Samoa Joe. Now they're fighting FTR. I don't think this would have been significant if it hadn't been for Dynamite, which could make you wonder, why did we not just wait to debut Jay White on the new Collision show? What was the emergency of getting Jay White out there then, if it was just to have him fuddle around on the mid-card in a nothing feud, doing not much, being a footnote on a pay-per-view? Why not just wait, have him debut on Collision, and continue down this streak that they're on right now? Just makes you wonder, right? But you want to talk about Collision having benefits, paying dividends for wrestlers? Bullet Club Gold have absolutely benefited from Collision as it stands right now. Great match. I'm not going to get into the weeds here because there was a lot of stuff, but like I said, I just to circle back to this, but I thought the fake finish with the Blade Runner was absolutely fantastic. I think that's how they should have ended the match. Instead of Juice's roll-up thing that Jay White was keeping Dax from coming to break, Cash, I think, from going to break up, which really didn't come across well on television, and it added a little extra layer that I really didn't think was needed. But FTR, man, they're over. They're super over. We get a video package of Shawn Spears, who will be challenging for the TNT title at Battle of the Belts next week. Don't forget, folks, next week on Saturday night, it's a good night for a Saturday night fight this Saturday night. And there's going to be 3 hours of pro wrestling, 2 hours of Collision, 1 hour of Battle of the Belts. 2/3 of that, of those 3 hours are going to be really good. I'm still I have never been high on Battle of the Belts. I still don't know what they're for. I just don't know who they're for. I don't know. I think only us freakazoids watch it. I think they're ultimately always uninteresting. We get a backstage interview with FTR and the Bullet Club Gold. And we just talked about sets up, the 2 out of 3 falls match for next week. We get Dax saying something about going all fuzzy wuzzy on you, Jay, because Jay calls him fuzzy wuzzy. I'll go fuzzy wuzzy on you in Regina. And I don't know if these are, innuendo jokes, but, Americans, I want to let you know something. As a Canadian, I've been through the Regina jokes, and we've all been through the Regina jokes. We went through them when we were 12, 13 years old. We're good. Yeah, I can understand that, over the past couple of weeks, you've heard about cities in Canada like Balzac and Regina, and you think it's really funny. And I agree. It's cute. It's humorous. Yes, they do sound like genitalia and parts of. Sure. I get you. But it's also, for us up here, it's kind of cringe. We can stop. We get it. It's funny. Okay. It sounds like other things. That's good. Scorpio Sky made his big return on Collision, defeating Action Andretti. Sky wins here after a big hope spot by Andretti. Commentary put over the fact quite a bit here during this match that it might not be a walk in the park for Scorpio Sky. If he was to underestimate old Action Andretti here, he might be in for a Jericho surprise. That didn't quite happen, but they at least commentary tried to add a little flair to this. Sky pulls out the win with the TKO. And after the match, Scorpio Sky shakes his hand. And he walks away. So we're doing Scorpio Sky as a baby face. And I don't know about that. I don't know. I'm very curious. I don't know. I think Scorpio Sky as a baby face is extremely mid. Because I think Scorpio Sky, as it stands right now, is very mid. And there's a combination of factors there. What are these combination of factors, Warren? Well, here. I think the fact that he's been off TV for so long is not helping. Sometimes I will say, sometimes you can cycle people off television, keep them off TV for a while. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I think everyone at a basic level is excited to see Scorpio Sky back, especially if you're one of the freakazoids who's been there since the beginning, aka me, where you know how much of an integral part Scorpio Sky was from the get-go of AEW, right? But ever since they split SCU up, he's been floundering. He's been looking for his footing. And I think there was a time that he has momentum. Right now, he has no momentum. So he's coming back. He left out of injury, took some time off, and was kept off television for all this period. He left when he had no momentum. So he's not even coming back off of the promise of something that happened, something happened that should not have. His injury kept him from something that should have happened, or he was on such a streak that people were like very disappointed to see him. He's coming back in an environment which is highly competitive, extremely different from when it once was, and we're supposed to just accept him back as vanilla babyface, which didn't really work, which is why they pivoted him to try to be a heel, especially against Sammy Guevara, which I think had a little more teeth to it, had a little more success to it, especially when he was paired with Dan Lambert. I have my thoughts on the Dan Lambert America Top Team angle, and how it ultimately played out, which I feel didn't benefit neither Ethan Page nor Scorpio Sky in the grand scheme of things, because Scorpio Sky is returning, and it should feel like a bigger deal than an AEW original is hitting the ring again, and that he's getting a new I don't want to say push. We'll see how that turns out, but he's going to have at the very least wind being blown into his sails. It should feel more exciting than this. Whereas now he really feels like just a guy. And it's funny how, you can go back and listen back in the day when I was talking about Scorpio Sky. I was like, look, this guy has such a high ceiling and so on and so forth. I don't have that discourse anymore. It's, it kind of sucks, but I think the time off did not do him any favors. I don't think the way he was pushed did him any favors. To a degree, he's coming back with a blank slate. You could argue that. You can absolutely make an argument that Scorpio Sky's coming back and he can do whatever he wants because he's not beholden to anything. He can just reignite his career in any possible way. We just have to hope that the booker's behind this, that Scorpio can deliver, because there are things that Scorpio is good at, things that he's not quite as good at, and as long as the strengths are leaned into, I think he'll be fine. But I mean, this was fine, nothing more. If anything, Andretti's spots were much more significant. I thought they were more exciting, and I was convinced that he was going to work the heel program here because Action Andretti is a clear babyface for the audience. Have we already, look, I'm talking myself into this here right now. Have we already experienced the first misstep of Scorpio Sky's big return? Should he have been debuted against Action Andretti? If he's not going to be a heel, is this misstep number one? And then we get the main event, the Owen Hart Foundation's men's semifinal match, where CM Punk finally climbed the hill. He reached the top of the mountain and finally, after 4 tries, defeated Samoan Joseph and will advance in the tournament. I thought this was good. Overall, I think it weighed the drama quite well. They had been pushing hard over the past week that, diving deep into the lore of pro wrestling like AEW is wont to do, to bring out the fact that, these guys have been enemies for the better part of 2 decades, even more so than that. And that finally they were going to have the big one in that CM Punk. And they were driving this home, right? CM Punk has never defeated Samoa Joe, to the point that at first I was like, CM Punk is going to do this. But they were driving this home so much that it created a sliver of doubt in my mind that suddenly I was like, wait, what if Joe beats him again? Which would make a lot of sense. But then I was like, well, what do you want for your finals in Calgary for the Cup And when Ricky Starks won his match, I was sitting there going, oh, well, Joe's winning. We're doing babyface versus heel, right? That's clearly what we're doing. What do I know about booking pro wrestling shows, clearly, right? Anyway, Punk at first was avoiding Joe's big offense at the start of this match. Joe nopes a Punk dive, and I love that gets a spot. And Joe is so cool when he does it too, right? He just like waddles away. They fight on the floor. Punk is bleeding from the mouth. We get some strikes and an elbow drop by CM Punk. Samoa Joe avoids the GTS. CM Punk avoids a muscle buster. But a later go to sleep, reversing to a choke, reversing to a roll up, gets the win for Punk. So yeah, the big fourth one, the one where CM Punk gets the big win after this epic rivalry that has legendary implications on the independent circuit throughout the 2000s, ended with a roll-up win. The most devastating move in pro wrestling. So, look, okay, let's finish up with the match here before we get into some, until we start busting out of the frame here. None of these guys are in the physical shape that they were 2 decades ago. And I think that's, I think that's clear. And I think that's fair analysis. I'm not saying that these guys are slouches. I'm just saying that, they're not the same guys as they were 20 years ago, and that's normal. The business takes its toll, especially on the way that, both of these guys wrestled. And it's fine. So this match had to be about the story. They had to create drama in the match, and they did, and it was dramatic because you have 2 fantastic storytellers in this ring regardless, in both Joe and CM Punk. But I was still waiting, nonetheless, in this match for peak drama to hit. That moment where it's just like, where fans are up on their feet because, I don't know, like, neither guy can finish the other guy off, and we've been storytelling this great dramatic increase. Like nothing here hit to that degree. Because again, I think it was fair of me to have that expectation because this was hyped. Yes, only a week's hype, but it was hyped as a big time match. And anyone who is into wrestling history and anyone who's watched, anyone who was around in Ring of Honor, watching Ring of Honor in the mid 2000s at the time, were into this as well. They understood the implications. So everyone who wanted something big out of this, I think we were kind of all left with a little, with our appetite still quite there. Our whistle has not been wetted properly here. I think it was fair of us to expect a big dramatic crescendo. And it was being built in a way where I was expecting Joe to win. So, like I said, I think the match was well worked. It was smartly put together, but it didn't reach a height which I feel it should have, and especially not through the finish, which I think is kind of anticlimactic in the context that they were building here. Now, you can tell the story here, of course, that CM Punk rolled up Joe. So did he squeak out a win as opposed to having a definite victory? Sure. Absolutely. I think that's a story you can tell. But in the moment, in this situation, in front of this crowd, I think it didn't deliver on its promise. Now, speaking of this crowd, you have to wonder about the decision of having Punk go over on Samoa Joe, not only in this fashion, but in front of this particular crowd, in front of an audience of not even 2,000 people in Regina, where you could have held this in any of the great wrestling centers of the United States. Chicago, Philly. You could have held that match there. New York. And it would have been more impactful, more meaningful. I really do. I think it was a strange decision to have this happen in the way it did, having Punk go over in front of such a small crowd, which is in a crowd that is not renowned to be a wrestling crowd. God bless Regina, I'm sure you have qualities. Being a great wrestling town ain't one of them. But you go to one of the great, one of the great centers of pro wrestling in the United States, and I think this match takes on a whole other, it creates a whole other vibe to this match, and the significance of CM Punk winning becomes even more significant. But I also think it shouldn't have ended this way regardless. Now, after the match, Joe attacks CM Punk again, so the door is open for them to revisit this match. For all intents and purposes, we're not done with Samoa Joe versus CM Punk. It's not finished yet. And, if they wanted to, you could have run this at Wembley for fuck's sake, But now it's like, well, Punk has already had his win. Sure, Joe can come back and say, "Oh, you never really beat me." But that's my impersonation of Samoa Joe, and it's terrible. He sounds like a pirate for some reason. "You never really beat me. You just rolled me up." Then they can set up a stip for the next match, a last man standing or some bullshit like that, And that's something you can run at Wembley. That's something awesome that you can do for a big time match like that. I'm talking about the big, wrestling hubs of the United States, but you're going to have to give something for the Wembley crowd to chew on. But the allure of CM Punk beating Samoa Joe is done. Like in the record books, he has his W. So it's not even that intriguing anymore. It doesn't have that aura about it. I think this is a situation that regardless of what they try to do after, the toothpaste is out of the tube. And we're just going to have to deal with it moving forward. Will they have proper good matches? Will they have at least one proper good match down the line? Probably. I'd say more likely than not. Because I like the idea of Joe being so bitter, right? That he attacks. He can't cope with the fact that that Punk bested him, right? Because he extended his hand and, CM Punk shook it. They're like, cool. But then Samoa Joe attacked him. And I like the idea of Joe being so bitter at this, despite the fact that he's beaten him multiple times, that this is the first win in 4 matches that CM Punk has over him, that he's just like, nah. I like that. So whatever it leads to, it will lead to something else. It will probably lead to a stipulation, and we'll see how all this breaks down. But anyway, FTR comes in for the save because Joe is ready to Roderick Strong him, CM Punk. But FTR makes sure that doesn't happen. Ricky Starks comes out too, but he stays at the top of the ramp because he's facing CM Punk next week, and the guys are in the ring. They're like, "Well, come on, Ricky." Ricky's like, "No. As it should. I mean, Christ, you guys are competitive. You're going to be fighting each other. That's fine. It's good." Next week, finals of the Owen Hart, both men and women, from the Saddle Dome in Calgary. I mean, At this point, it can either go two ways. I think it goes either two ways, right? Where you have the Bret Hart guy, like I've been saying from the get-go, you have the Bret Hart guy win the Owen Cup tournament in Calgary in front of, the ardent Hart supporters. Nobody's going to boo Stu Hart next week, by the way. Or you go with Ricky, giving him a big babyface win over CM Punk. And you can absolutely see CM Punk saying, no, I'm going to put Ricky over. Ricky's one of his boys. Frankly, and a lot of you may not want to hear this, but I'd go with CM Punk because, like I said, this tournament has to culminate in something special. There has to be something big. Have the Bret Hart guy win. I have no trouble with this. It actually makes a lot of sense. And then you have CM Punk being at the top of the winners of this tournament. Nothing against Ricky Starks again. But I think it makes a lot of sense and makes for good TV and good stories moving forward. Now, you can absolutely make the case for another big loss for Ricky Starks. When is he going to get his big wins? And I agree. That's why I'm not booking the show. That's why I see both sides, and I think they're both possible. I think one is more valuable than the other right now. And I think if Ricky was hotter than he is right now, I'd probably, my scales would tip a little more evenly. They wouldn't tip then. They would be even. My scales would be much more even than they are now because they tip more in the direction of CM Punk winning. There you go. So we're going to wrap it up for today, folks. That was the Collision review that happened last night, not tonight. Thank you very much for watching, listening here, either if it's on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes. One last dash for a like if you don't mind, or if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast application. Again, thank you very much. 5-star reviews and ratings always help out a great deal. I will be back on Tuesday for the Mr. Warren Hayes show proper. We're going to be reviewing the New Japan Strong Independence Day shows. We're going to be previewing the G1. There's a lot. It's already going to be a busy Tuesday night, so be sure to be there. Have a great rest of your weekend. I'll see you next time.